Hey y'all, Tyson here, and we're going to go into part 2 of our introduction to snaps. Yes, so hopefully you've seen our previous video on this new feature in SketchUp, snaps, and in this video, we're just going to dig in and kind of go into, more methods of how you can create them and manipulate snaps and just some ideas around how you might use them. Let's jump in. So let's start with just creating some snaps from scratch and methodologies you might use. So if I look, we had these shelves before. This one, has a few snaps set up, but this one doesn't yet. Let's set those up now. Let's do that in two ways. Maybe I want to create some guides first. The nice thing about snaps is it lets me create a point here where one doesn't exist based on the geometry. So I want that point in the center of this shelf, and I want it, I'll lock this at the floor. So that's where I want this point right there. I'm just going to edit this one level deep and say right click, make edit snaps. Now, one of the things you can do with snaps is use the arrow keys to lock a direction, just like other tools. So if I hit the right arrow key, it's red, left for green, up is blue. In our case, it looks like I need the green, so I'm going to hover over that where those guides cross and double click. Done. Easy peasy. I've got my snap where I want. It's oriented correctly. That's great. Let's do that a different way. So I'm going to delete that snap, delete, and I'm actually going to delete my guides too. What if we said, well, let's just create the snap. So I'm going to come in here, make edit snaps, and I'm just going to put it right here. I know it needs to face forward, so I'm going to double click on this shelf and place the snap. Then when I hit the selection key, I can select that snap, and it kind of acts like geometry. So I'm moving it down, locking the blue direction. So I'm locking it to the floor. I'll move it over, lock it to this midpoint, and then I will move this back and lock to this back corner of the shelf. And so I've still got that snap exactly where I need it. And, again, you can create it in place or you can create it to the side and then move it into place. Either way, it's pretty easy to create snaps. Let's create some more. This time I will draw a line, let's say from this box out. I'm not going to worry about exactly how far, but again, the idea of this is that I have several versions of these shelves and I want to easily be able to snap them side by side. So let's right click, make some snaps. This looks like it's in the correct orientation already, but again, I can tap the arrow keys to change that. But yep, red, I believe, double click on that line, and we don't need that line anymore. So we've got one snap there. I want one on each side. One thing you can do, again, I'll just select this snap and then toggle the flip command. And I'm going to make a copy, so tapping the modifier key to make a copy, and then I'll find the center point here of my shelf, and if we look at that, it did indeed. So we've got a copy on each side. Perfect. One of the things that you should get in the habit of doing when you're making snaps is testing them. So if I take my shelf, I say, let me see how that lines up. I will move it from this snap, make a copy, and snap it right here. Now that might look okay, except actually what I did is I made a mistake. Because I based those on this box, I really needed to base them on the outside of the legs. No problem. I'm going to come in here and just grab this snap, use the move tool, lock the red direction and lock it to the leg. Same thing over here. I'll start moving that out, lock the red direction, move it to the outside of the leg. Just a simple mistake, but quick test again. That is exactly what I want. So it's pretty easy. And the great thing about snaps, as you've seen, we're sort of just moved them like regular geometry. And now I want to have snaps in this shelf. So I'm going to edit this component, shelf component, select one, two, even drag select. I've got the 3 snaps I just created. I'm going to copy them on my keyboard, close that, and hit my shortcut key or go to edit, paste in place. Well, let me be sure I selected these. So I'm going to copy, paste in place. I made a mistake there. I was trying to paste snaps into open space, and that's not how snaps are created. Snaps only are embedded in groups and components, so it wasn't pasting them. Simple mistake, easy to correct because I pasted them into this shelf, and now I'm going to select, move them, say, by that mid one, and line them up to a midpoint here. So it's easy to copy and paste snaps where you need them. And now, if I move this, yep, it looks like they are working correctly. Awesome. So that's a little bit about creating snaps. One of the things to keep in mind with snaps, we've talked about before that snaps have a front and back face. And in this case, the front face is oriented outward, and you can see the back face here. This is corresponding to the style. So a typical front and back face, even though my style is a little bit different than the default one, if I go into styles and edit this style, I can say, you know what? Let's make that back color a bright red, and we'll make that front color a nice light blue. Now you can see that that front and back, they take on the front and back colors. And if I move that, indeed, you can see those changes there. So if you want more visual separation on your snaps, you can change the front and back color. I'm going to revert back, but that is an option. Now let's look at something that is very enjoyably named the tractor beam. When I take, say, one of these pipes and I move it from a snap, and it's going to snap as we'd expect, but I can tap the Command key, I'm on a Mac, or the Alt key on PC, and you see how it creates this blue line and gives us basically an indication of not only where it could snap to, but how it would orient to that. So it is just going to pick the nearest snap and give us a preview of what that could look like. And I don't even have to actually hit the snap point. I can, even from out here, click, and it'll snap to where. Again, if I hit Command, but invoke tractor beam, it'll do that. So that's tractor beam. It'll give you a preview of what snaps are going to do. And one of the ways that that could be useful to you, let's make a copy of this piece out here, change it, and let's say that I am going to copy a few of these. Now, if I use the move tool, one of the options is to cycle through copy and stamp. So if I do that before I've selected it, copy, stamp, so I'm going to stamp this, and from here, it's going to keep repeating. But if I tag the tractor beam on, that could be a good visual way to see what I'm going to get as I move through this. So whether or not you use it with stamp, tractor beam can be really useful for visualizing how snaps are going to interact. That's a kind of an overview of some of the other features of snaps. Let's dive. Um, I've got my scene here called Into the Weeds, and that's where we're headed next. This is kind of just some theoretical ways that you may or may not use snaps. They may or may not be useful. But I've created, if I look at this, it's a simple component and I've got a snap right in the middle. One of the things that we talked about is that you should try to avoid embedding snaps deeply into nested groups and components. It doesn't tend to work that well. But that said, let's say, and this is not a great example, but we're going to use it anyway. Let's say I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy this geometry a couple places. I think I actually want to flip these. But then I will orient these a little differently, however we like. And now I'm going to take this picture frame, copy it, I'm going to edit, and I only have just the three the three snaps I created, but I'm going to paste that picture frame in here. It has a snap. That's just oriented to the front. So I'm going to move that by that snap. And then any of these that I choose, you can see it's automatically rotating to align it to those exterior snaps that I created. Now, again, that's not the best example, but it's just one way where you could do something like this, embed your snaps into just other geometry that you can then turn off. And it can help you just to place snaps or place objects in your groups and components. Another thing that might be useful, maybe not, if I turn that back on, if you're trying to put snaps in a tricky orientation or on a corner or something and you're having trouble getting it to work, remember, we can copy paste snaps. So I could move this geometry into place. And then if I'm more comfortable using the geometry to rotate, then I can come in, copy that snap from here, go into my geometry, paste it in place here. So now I've got that snap in that orientation that I wanted. Again, Is that going to be useful? Most of the time, you're putting snaps in a pretty obvious place on flat surfaces. It may not be, but it is something to keep in mind. Now, as far as this idea of visual representation of what a snap is doing, let's jump back to these pipes. Now, I've put some of these sort of L arrows, and those are just simple components, flat components that I have set in here, and I have made these to orient the way that the snap is working. So they're sort of, for me, just a visual guide. And the reason I did that is because when I'm laying out, let's say, this pipe, I may want this pipe to, you know, come out this way, and then I need this to turn right or to turn left. Well, I can do either with this particular elbow based on which side I choose. So if I need it to turn left, I can choose that one. And if I need it to turn, I'm sorry, that's turning right, and I need it to turn left, then I can choose the other side. But in this case, what if I needed to turn up or down? Well, it might seem, oh, well, I'll just make a copy of this and rotate it. Now, I'll move this here, but that's not how it's going to work. And the guides help me realize that, because they help me realize that even though I've rotated this, if I place it here and then I'm going to extend this out, you can see it is acting correctly. It's sort of rotating it back into place the way it's set up. So I've made a unique component of this pipe and changed the snap direction. This time it's going this way and this one's going up. And in that way, I can take and say, this one I do want to go up or down. You see, by selecting this side, I'm going to go down. And if I choose this other snap, I can instead turn up. So that is nothing more than to say, you can, this only works because I'm changing the snap direction on this one, but I'm leaving them the same here. But if I change the direction here, that changes the behavior here. They're going to align, and sometimes that can get confusing if you're trying to do a complex assembly. So whether or not that's helpful, you may want to create some guides that are totally separate, but that just can give you sort of some visual representation of how you might orient different pieces so that they snap in the way that you want. And then you just go to town and have fun. I I hope that wasn't too much in the weeds for you, and it is. It's a little bit, I don't know, theoretical, because not sure how you plan to use snaps. You may use them very simply, or you may create, very complex assemblies. And whether guides or not will be useful to you, whether the tractor beam will be useful to you. It's at least cool that you can now invoke a tractor beam in SketchUp. It's going to be fun to see where this evolves. I'm very excited for snaps as they are now. I'm excited to see what y'all will create with them. I know our community always just blows us out of the water with, your ideas and how you push the envelope beyond what we even imagined was possible. So I'm very excited for what's to come. Let us know what you think. Again, let us know if you have questions on it as it is now, and let us know if you have feedback on how you want to improve this new feature of SketchUp. That's all for now. Thank you again. Remember, hit that like and subscribe if you're not already, and we will see you next time.